Welcome to the Savage Worlds GM podcast. I'm your host, Jared Savage Daddy Gunning. Tonight's topic is NPCs, brought to you by Roll20.net, the world's largest virtual tabletop. Check them out tonight on Roll20.net. Follow the show on Facebook and Twitter, SWGM Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube, SWGM Podcast, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Savage Worlds Game Master Podcast. If you have suggestions for the show, feel free. SavageDaddy@gmail.com. Nailed it like a boss. And here we go. To join the discussion, we have Cam, the Savage intern, returning to defend his title.
Hey, what's up?
Dave, the rules maven Scott.
Even a blind nut finds a squirrel once in a while.
And Gary.
Hey, even a broken clock's right twice a day. That's what we're doing, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's not rocket surgery. It's not rocket surgery. So, okay. We're also have the live chat going on YouTube if you're watching the streaming live, so feel free to participate. And we will be reading off those questions tonight as we go. So, I wanted to have this discussion about NPCs in Savage Worlds because I feel it's like a bit of, as far as a game master topic goes, sometimes it's a little overlooked. We've all had a discussion about the brilliant revelation that you don't build NPCs the same way you build characters. You just build them to what you give them what they should have. You don't count points. You don't go through character creation. You just build them. But I think that a lot of the focus is on how do you make them effective in combat? How do you make them last longer? What edges should you give them? Does an extra get an edge, or is that only for wild cards? Seems to be the length and breadth of that discussion. What we want to kind of focus on tonight, and we could talk about that a little bit, but what we want to focus on tonight is how do you bring the NPCs to the forefront? How do you make them characters that are part and parcel of your story as a GM? So there's the topic. Open the peanut gallery. Anybody jump in who has a comment or has an idea, wants to say something? Go for it.
My first thing would be just saying that the stats are the least important part of an NPC. The actual personality and the actual character of the character is what will be mattered and remembered, not, oh man, he could swing those swords so good. I mean, he must have had at least a D10.
Well, I mean, to risk being, quoted as bingo card in the chat, we've constantly said, hey, just give them a D6 and everything, a D8 and what they're supposed to be good at, and go with it. That's because what Cam just said. The stat block is absolutely secondary to making that an NPC your players actually want to engage with. It's not just a bag of hit points to be killed so that they can get the XP that comes spilling out at the end. That's another system that we've all kind of grown up from and moved on to Savage Worlds. So I think the idea of actually making these real characters that are worth interacting with will also see you have combats that are worth caring about. We'll have you have social interactions where the players get more invested because that NPC is better. It's not just, they've got charisma and persuasion at a D8, and by the way, they also have the connections edge and toughness. Really?
Well, and Gary, you were going to say something.
I was going to just ask what an NPC is.
Oh, an NPC is a non-polycarbonate structure.
That's what I thought you guys were talking about. All right, for a second there, I thought I was on the wrong show.
Well, I mean, and here's the thing too. I think that a lot of us as game masters, as well as players in a role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game, are very quick to dismiss and forget that, number one, these are characters. I mean, they're characters in your story. I mean, imagine watching imagine watching a TV show or a movie and somebody other than the main character just walks up, stands next to the guy, the main character, doesn't do anything or say anything. It's the hero's best friend. It's the hero's, hairstylist can be an NPC. But I just think that all we look at him is just basically pawns on a chessboard trying to trying to balance out combat encounters in Savage Worlds, which I'm going to say right now regarding the balanced combat encounter in Savage Worlds. Yeah, that is Bigfoot riding a unicorn. That doesn't exist. Just forget about it.
It can happen. Why you got to be such a naysayer, man?
Exploding dice, bennies. Don't bother.
You can sit down and build something, and there are rules in the book to build a balanced encounter. You can absolutely do it, but if you actually achieve it at the table, that's completely different. Building it does not mean that it's not going to just raffle stomp your players because of dice rolls, or completely and totally underperform if Jared's being the GM.
Right, because I roll for shit.
And I would just say that in any RPG, regardless of the system, there is no such thing as balanced combat. It's all an illusion. Considering any system has dice, cards, any sort of random system, by proxy of just being random, it will never go the way you think it will.
Hey, Cam, I think your mom's in your room, dude.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, I can understand that, but at the same time, you're also talking about, Savage Worlds, which has the exploding dice. It has the bending mechanic. You're going to have a lot swingier moments. That whole cinematic pulp feel that people love about the system is in itself going to cause any prep work you put into balance to just completely go out the window as soon as the dice hit the table.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it, right? I mean, we've all seen an extra walk up and hit roll, and I got a raise on the attack roll. Awesome! Here comes the damage. Oh shit! 4 wounds.
You have the NPC extra who's not supposed to have been anything but a footnote, who the freaking legendary gunslinger decides to call out in the middle of the street. And somehow that extra rolls well enough and then explodes on the thing. And you've got a legendary character standing there with a 6 wounds worth of damage they've got to soak. It happens.
It absolutely happens. So as GMs, how do you build your NPCs? Where do you start? What do you do?
Stat-wise, I wouldn't even bother statting them out. It's one of the beautiful parts about Savage Worlds. Like you said, throw down a couple of D6s, and you're off to the races. Personality, character, give him some flair, give him some zinc, give him a personality. That's the main thing. What's his drive? What's his deal? What's he doing there? One of the in the Deadlands game that I play on Sunday, I had my players go into this little inn tavern kind of a thing. And we're doing the flood, the first part of it. So of course, in the city of Los Angeles, I'm sure everybody knows they're all a bunch of cannibals and stuff like that. I rolled them into this little cantina, and little did they know that they were cannibals. They were going to chop them up, try and chop my party up and feed them. But I had one of the characters. I don't know if you guys have ever played the video game Borderlands, but it's Scooter's sister. I can't remember what her name is, but she's kind of a big hefty chick, packs a wrench around inside the game and stuff like that. But she's full on hillbilly. And so I had her set up so that everybody that was in the place was one of her lovers. And anytime she took a hit, instead of followers, right, they would dive in front of her and they'd be like, "You ain't going to get my Masu." And
so that guy, Fanatic.
It was, I used the Fanatic and stuff on him, but I gave her some flavor and gave her some character and stuff like that. She came at him with a giant knife and basically told him she was going to cut them all up, and all the patrons in the bar were her love slaves. For lack of a better word, made for a memorable character,
right? See, and I think there's an interesting moment in role playing as a GM where the first time you introduce a nothing burger character, this character is literally just paint on the wall, set dressing for what's going on. They are not important to the story. And the players decide to interact with that character, and then the character keeps coming up. That character will be more important to your players than any other character you've built. You could spend weeks writing a massive backstory for your big bad. The barista at the coffee shop that they keep going to is the one they're interacting with more, having more role-play moments with, and will be more memorable to them. So one of the things I try to do is, even if it's just a single adjective, in my notes, every time the players run into no an unnamed NPC extra, 72 gets a dash next to it and an adjective written down along with a description of where they met them. Coffee shop barista, bubbly. And then every time they go back there, I've got that note to give this character a bubbly personality or a dour personality. It doesn't matter what you do, but give it, even if it's one note, to every NPC. Every single one. And then let organically the NPC you have to give extra stuff to, like Emma Sue, that comes out of not you planning ahead. That comes out of the characters getting involved with this character who was just hillbilly, was the only note on the paper, and then later on, now, everyone in the place is a lover of hers. They'll all die for her. She's got, this wrench she always carries around called Bubba 2 that was, named after the child she lost to her first husband. And you start layering in all these little details over time each time you play and that character comes up. And you just add to that little note line until by the end of it, you've got a full-fledged, NPC that an author would be proud to put in their novel, but you built it at the table during play by making it more and more interesting for your players and letting them interact with that character.
Well, and also too, if your players interact with one of your NPCs and keep coming back, guess what? That's now an important person in your world, an important person in your plot, and as a GM, you better make that character meaningful. You better make what they do. They should play an important part or role, not just in your game world, but in the story itself, because your players are demanding it. They're going back to that well to role play with that character, then role play with that character. And I thought something that both Gary and Dave touched on was the idea of giving each of the characters at least some kind of shtick. I think is something that's very easy to do to really kind of bring a character to life. Like, for example, you can have a guy who carries around a big baseball bat, and he calls it something. He has a name for it, and every time he beats somebody down with it, he puts a tick mark on the handle. So you could just have that guy sitting there putting a tick mark on his handle, and somebody goes, "What's he doing? Why is he putting a tick mark on his handle?" Oh, you don't know about this guy? And then you have another NPC go, "Oh, you don't know about this guy? Okay, yeah. He just beats somebody to death with that baseball bat. Because every time he does it, he puts another notch on that baseball bat. You better steer clear." And I would say also, too, the one thing that I think really helps bring an NPC to life is you role-playing the character. Buy all the way in, no matter how ridiculous, stupid you think you look or sound. Speak in a character voice.
My shoes.
Dave, I was gonna ask you if you could do your best bubbly barista. I want to see this.
Yeah, I need to hear that.
Will not die. It keeps coming up. I keep being asked about it. It's the character Jared handed me in his freaking ETU game. All those were pre-gens. None of those were built by the players. But Jared goes, "Here's this character, and she's followed around by a ghost Pomeranian, and she's a fashionista." And that's all he gave me.
Well, and I'll share something like from the Dead End campaign. I had a nurse, a survivor character in a colony who was just supposed to be a nurse. I just described her as this elderly woman who was sitting there acting as a nurse to the guy who was the main doctor. The players ended up role-playing and interacting with that character. I had no voice for the character. I didn't know what her goddamn name was. And all on the fly, "Oh, well, her name's Mabel. She's an older Southern lady, so she talks like this, honey, sweetie." And it got to the point where, 30 minutes, Dave? Like 20 minutes?
At least.
I'm like,
this burger character became a central part of all the role play the rest of that session. Even when we went away from that moment, the players would refer back to that character in other role plays, and they would talk to the other NPCs at the camp about that character because that person had stood out so much.
Yeah, as a GM, one of my most uncomfortable moments. Because I'm like, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. We're like role playing. I'm like, okay, the improv dude, she's giving you the information. What do you mean? What do they have to eat around here? Oh, Jesus. On the flip side of that coin too, I've said it before, I'll say it again. No such thing as a bad accent in role play. I don't care if you start off sounding like Antonio Banderas and end up sounding like a Frenchman, a cliched Frenchman in the same sentence. Nobody gives a shit. Commit to it. Just own it. Commit to it. And if you don't know how to do a Dutch accent, I'll give you an example. I have a character who speaks Dutch. I don't know what a Dutch accent sounds like, so all Dutch people sound like Keanu Reeves. I'm going to do the worst Keanu Reeves impression I possibly can. Use the same quotes and just say I'm speaking Dutch. And as ridiculous as it sounds, hilarity at the table. Just fun. And it becomes a memorable moment from one with your group, from one role play campaign to the next. Find character voices. Give them interesting names, not just Bob the Builder. You know, oh, who's this guy? Oh, he's Bob the bartender.
You know, yet another example. We were playing a game over voice, didn't have cameras on or anything. We're playing on, I believe, Roll20 at the time. And I was eating a bowl of ice cream, and I got so freaking cold I started to stutter. And that character became a stutterer for fucking 2 years. I had to stutter every time the character spoke. The one night where I didn't stutter at all, the other players called me out on it. Like, wait, where did his stutter go?
I would have killed that character. I would have killed him. He'd have been dead. He would have come back and found him hanging from a
in game where other characters were just cutting him off or all kinds of hostile to him, treated him like he was of low intelligence because he stuttered. So this character took on a life of its own, all because I was sitting here eating a freaking bowl of ice cream and got chilly.
I mean, I would also recommend playing against type as well. So, if you're running a standard fantasy kind of campaign in Savage Worlds, don't make the dwarf act like the dwarf, have the dwarf act like the elf. Make the hobbit or the halfling, make the halfling belligerent and aggressive as hell. Just like in everybody's face, challenging everybody all the time. Because the juxtaposition of what everybody's used to with that type of character when you first introduce that as an NPC is going to make that a memorable character.
So we actually touched on this a little bit earlier, but Stefan Dragonspawn's asking, and I will ask the other three members of the cast because I've already answered this. Has any NPC in one of the host's games start out as just a name and then become a major personality? So now, I mean, obviously I had said that, I make sure every character has that one note and, is nothing and then can grow. Jared talked about Mabel. What about you, Gary?
Oh, yeah. I've had quite a few. In my 5th edition campaign, when I was running Adventure Leagues, in, I think it's season 3 or something like that, they go to Mole Master. Just completely random, completely dumb. They wanted to go buy leather armor. And so I was role-playing it up. They walked into the shop. And they met this guy whose name was like Philippe or something like that. And he had this Swedish accent, but he works in an oil shop. So he was wearing nothing but like a leather loincloth. And he was oiled up from top to bottom because, of course, you oil leather. And so that's how I explained him. He was sizzle chest, loincloth, and he walked out suave. He's like, hello, my name is Philippe. What can I do for you? Except that's my French accent, but you're talking before. Do you know how many times I started off as an Englishman and ended up as a German or something? And I just did it all the time. That's exactly what happened. But yeah, no, and then so they were going to come back and pick up their armor the next day, and then when Mole Master gets blowed up, they were like, "Hey, we want to go back and rescue Philippe because for whatever reason he ended up being like the leather master on their ship as they floated away from Mole Master and his destruction." And I continually had to play that stupid ass character. And so many times they would refer to Philippe, and And as you can tell, I'm not some like sizzle-chested, suave Frenchman or whatever, but it just things like that are pretty funny. And it's out of the blue, right? Like no clue. It was just a one-off, and then all of a sudden, it's let's see what Philippe is doing.
Yep,
that's mine.
Awesome. What about you, Cam?
For me, it was like throwaway characters, like, oh, this is just some character that like a player character would say, oh, this is just someone I know. Like, I did like a Savage Worlds version of Angel, like that universe, but it was like alt universe, like it was their characters as the main characters instead. Like they were the Scooby Gang or whatever. And one of the characters like happened to know like Bigfoot, and Bigfoot ended up being like this like super chill bro skater stoner guy that was like all into new agey hippie stuff, and that was so much fun getting to play that character. And to go back to the playing against type, one of my favorite characters I played recently was in a 5th ed game, and I was a dwarf wizard, but instead of being like Gimli, I was a really meek nerd that was really socially anxious, so I wouldn't look people in the eye ever, and I would talk really quietly and kind of stutter a little bit. And those kind of characters are the most fun, even if it's not like going the exact opposite, but like playing a race that's normally boisterous is like really lame and nerdy, and that kind of thing is really fun too.
Right. And well, and here's the thing too. I think just from a role play standard, go watch movies. You see something in a movie that hits you a certain way and go, oh, I really like that character. Okay, why do I like that character? What is it about that character? Oh, it's they're sarcastic. Okay, so my next NPC is just going to be sarcastic. That's what I'm going to do with them. You can do the same thing too with just having a character. If they're meek, and I think we have a lot of can sometimes have problems with the stage and theatrics part of the role play, acting in character. When you do it for your table as a GM, you're kind of leading the way and making it okay, making it quote unquote a safe space around the table for everybody to sort of role play. I would recommend, like for example, if the character is meek, find something verbally or in the way the character speaks, mannerisms that telegraph that. So if the character is meek, like Cam said, when you're role playing, just break eye contact, very minor eye contact with the other players at the table. When you're role playing, actually bring your voice down to almost a whisper.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and that's what I did.
I just didn't think that it was a good idea that I should.
Yep, that's exactly how I played him.
And trail off.
Frostbeard was his name.
Right, and trail off. That's just as captivating as the loudmouth, woo! Douchebag that comes in and just starts kicking over everybody's sandcastle on the beach. It's just as compelling. Like an old man. Don't do like we can do the cliche thing. It's easy to do the cliche thing, but take it to a different level. He just always complains about his body aches. That could be like a quirk. Find a quirk, find a shtick for the character, and it really helps to bring him alive. I say that to kind of lead into this. How about what do you guys feel about making your NPCs flawed?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what makes them interesting.
We've talked extensively about this idea that hindrances are the most powerful thing on your character sheet to really fuel role play. The same is true of the NPC. I don't care that he's the greatest freaking swordsmith. I can get a swordsmith in every town. The fact that he only has one arm, now that's going to stand out to me when he's also a blacksmith working without metal all day.
Right.
Give him physical flaws, give him disabilities, give him emotional flaws, give him deep, dark secrets that they're very protective of. Give them, an annoying tick. Give them these things that stand out and make that character absolutely holistic and real. One of the characters I interacted with in a game recently was a former police officer who was serving on a task force in an area. So he was kind of just doing like a clerk's job because he was a cop instead of a soldier. So he was pushed into this clerk's job, and he was pushed into this clerk's job in a building that had something in it that he was allergic to. So every time you spoke to him, he's sniveling and he's just stuffed up and he can't really talk to you real well. And just that sold that character in a way nothing else could have, because it made it uncomfortable to deal with that character. You as a player felt uncomfortable hearing that sound coming from the GM, and that made your character act as if they were uncomfortable around that NPC.
I think one of the things you can do too, it's more of an advanced kind of technique, but have the character's flaw be another NPC and play with that dynamic. Like you may have the big burly, I'm Hugo the blacksmith and I'm very manly and I don't even wear gloves or I don't take any kind of protection. That's for sissies. But he's henpecked by his wife, who's this diminutive little thing that keeps coming out of the back of the shop, screaming and yelling at him, and he's completely just deflated by her. Like, what are you always having a character whose cell phone is always blowing up, like right in the middle of them talking to you, like, oh, hold on a second, I gotta take this. What? No, I don't know. And having like a side conversation as that character. Anything you can do to mix it up to bring real life to the character, go for it. And I know it sounds like this to a lot of GMs, like really. So not only do I have to come up with a plot hook, not only do I have to keep track of everybody's freaking hindrances and edges and skills so that I make sure that I'm serving my players. Not only do I do all that, I've got to create the goddamn world from the ground up. I literally have the weight of the world on my shoulders, and now you want me to role play fucking NPCs? Yes. Yes, that's part of your job. It's part of your job. They're not two-dimensional paper cutouts that just go across the screen. They're living, breathing entities in that world. Bring life into them. They're not just combat stats.
A way that I think of like the building the world thing is like something that we've talked about on the show before, is just having like broad strokes of the world itself. But a way I like to think of it is like it's like a really old like PS1 game where it's all the fog and it just becomes like fleshed in as you go to it. Just renders the world around you. So the only thing you have to really care about in detail is the immediate area of the characters. Other than that, it's just like, oh yeah, some stuff's going down there.
Well, I was going to say the interesting aspect of this is the biggest reason that we keep coming back to this idea of make it happen at the table, make it one note about everybody is, again, if you put too much time and too much effort into planning that one character, that will be the character your players take a left turn and never fucking talk to, don't interact with. You wanted that to be the big bad, and the players have no interest in that plot hook. They're going to sail off to Timbuktu and get involved in a whole other adventure. Or they're going to take a right turn as they're going down the stairs and head off to talk to the county coroner, who you had never planned for them to go talk to.
So let's talk about that, because Jim has talked about that before. So let's kind of go through maybe the thought process of like what you would do in that situation as a GM. You've crafted this incredible investigative murder campaign, and you've brought the character. You've had this stroke of genius. Like, you know what? Here's how we're going to start it. Yeah, they're all going to be pulled into the police station to be interrogated, not because they're suspects, but because they knew the victim and they were close friends with the victim. And they're being interviewed as witnesses, as close friends with the victim. Awesome. And then the first thing they do, the second they step out of the police interrogation room, they head downstairs. You think, okay, they're going to go do A or B. And they go, all right, we're going to go check out the coroner's office. I'm going to go talk to the coroner. What? Yeah. Absolutely. So as the GM, you've got about 3 seconds to start to put the hamster on that wheel and get it running. What is that? What is the coroner's name? Does he work at nights only? What is his personality? Is he the kind of guy that has just become so, I want to say, I'm not using the right word, but has become so nose deaf spiritually to the fact that he's surrounded by bodies that he's so callous that he keeps his lunch in somebody's hands.
Yeah, he's keeping it warm. in a fresh body.
Yeah, or like the House MD thing where he was always going around and watching coma patients. We go into a coma patient's room and have him hold his drink, use their fingers like a drink holder while he's sitting there playing an Xbox or a PlayStation or Playboy. Or not Playboy, that's not the right word.
Play.
Wow. Where did that come from, mister?
I don't know.
I think we should delve into this topic a little more.
That particular avenue, because I know where Gary will take this conversation.
Yeah, I know too. What were this called? Game.
We get it, Jared. You'll play your Atari 2600 joystick.
There you go, with the button in the cord.
Got to reference the shirt.
No wireless.
Corner.
So,
how does he talk? Is he slow and methodical, or is he fast talking because he's under pressure?
One thing I would say, if you are ever backed into a corner and you need a name, the player hits you and you have that absolute brain death moment where there's nothing. There's a field of absolute nothing staring back at you as the player says, so what's his name? Grab two friends who are not sitting at the table and put their first name and last name together. Wham! Now you've got an NPC. Oh, wait. Now you've got two separate personalities to draw from and start stitching together those two people's actual flaws and boons and build a character from what you have that you absolutely interact with on a daily basis. If you ever run into a brick wall, that is the quickest, fastest way to recover. Is go to what you know. Go to a friend. Go to a family member. You know, that great Aunt Liza who hated her name because everyone who saw her compared her to Liza Minnelli. You know, go with that. Now that's the character quirk, and someone happens to walk by as the characters are standing there talking to Liza, and somebody walks by with headphones on blasting Liza Minnelli, and she just loses her shit, screaming at him, runs over, slams the door. Just take that moment and go, what can I do that's going to absolutely take from what I know and create a character that's memorable? It doesn't have to be something you plan in advance. It doesn't have to be something that you're really well versed in. Do an old Jewish man. Why? Because how many people actually run into old Jewish men unless you're in, a big city where there's, more Jews. You're out in the country, in the middle of the country. You got a player from Nebraska. You hit them with an old Jewish man, they won't have any idea how to react to that, but they'll remember it because it's not something they see. It's interesting.
Right.
So farm your table. Ask your players what the person's name is. That's the best way to go about it. We just did this deal in Deadlands where they walked into this into the sheriff's office and they had a bunch of bounty boards up and they wanted to know who was on the bounty boards and how much they were worth. And I was like, I don't know. So I'm like, there's 6 posters. Who's the first guy? What's his name? And I just let my players tell me who they were looking at on the bounty board, and I got a bunch of good names. One of the guys that I play with, his name is Kurt the handsome Kraut. We live in Canada up here. So anyways, no, his name is not Kurt. His real name is Kurt. It's Klaus the handsome Kraut. Let me get that straight. So anyways, these kids at this table, I'm like, they wanted to know who these guys were on the bounty board. One of them was Kurt the ugly Canadian, and that's actually who we went and we went after him in one of the campaigns. But I just
said that he wasn't a Canuck.
Yeah, if you ever get yourself backed into a corner and you need somebody's name, it's like, I don't know what his name is. You tell me what his name is. And another solid note too is if you ever come across a corner, they're always necrophiliacs, no matter what. That's a way to get out of any situation.
Well, okay.
Yeah, my go-to is usually coworkers because none of my friends know them. Like old coworkers or people I went to college with, they don't know them.
I try to come up with if we're just playing a game, we're not playing a long-lived campaign. It's just a one-shot or something. Oh, I'll come up with the weirdest, bizarrest name I can think of. Kurt, what's his name? Kurt Kapakahausman. Just wants to play go. What? Yeah, Kurt Kapakahausman.
I would do that, but being an overweight guy, everybody I play with would probably think I was having a stroke.
It everybody else smells toast, right?
Stops when your players reaches out. Do you smell toast?
And
Can you feel your left arm?
I think here's a good response if you're trying to gender, role playing at the table. When a player asks you out of character, what's the barkeeper's name? Is the GM go, I don't know. Why don't you walk up and ask him?
Yeah, hell yeah. That's exactly how you do it. And then
let's
that
role
gives
play
you-
that shit.
That's right. That gives you a couple seconds to get your shit together and figure out how you're going to turn your bartender into a necrophiliac, and then you're good to go.
Right, from
The
Canada.
players are like, oh man, he's so smart. And you're like, crap. Frank.
Yeah, and that's like that's almost, I want to say that's like genius level shit right there. When a character asks you out of character, when a player asks you out of character, what's the barkeeper's name? And you go, I don't know. You haven't asked him yet. Why don't you walk up and ask him? You'll either be like, dude, why are you being a dick? Or oh, he's the greatest GM ever. Oh, he's awesome.
Well,
Hey, just remember, that was my idea. Greatest GM ever.
there's also this idea: take your own emotional state at the table. You just got backed into a corner. You're panicking. So when they ask him his name, he panics.
Yeah.
And then that turns into a plot hook that turns into something you had never planned. And now you've got not only a memorable NPC, but you've got a memorable NPC who is a plot hook, all because you didn't have a freaking name to begin with.
Right. So how does that work out? So you as a player walk up and go, hey there, barkeep. What? Huh? Yeah. Talk to me. Talk to me? Yeah. Oh, hey, hi. Yeah.
Where's your accent? Oh, hey, hello there.
Hey, hi. Hi. What can I do for you? What's your name? My name? My name. You want to know my name? Why do you want to know my name? I don't really think that matters. And then, so right now, as a GM role-playing that, my first thought is, holy shit, he's in the witness protection program, and he thinks he's just been outed, and officers are outside waiting to blow him away. That's how I'm playing this scene.
Yeah, you stutter, and it's a mere seconds before my players have guns drawn and you're shot.
But I mean, that's the thing. Take what you know and just draw from that well. It doesn't matter if what you know is throwing it back on them for player agency's sake. It doesn't matter if what you know is being really inventive and creating names. It doesn't matter if what you know is freaking naming off your best friend from grade school who they've never met and then role-playing that person directly back at them. It doesn't matter what you go with. Just sell it. Go at it with everything. Throw yourself behind it 180%.
Yeah, just do the actor thing and just own it. Just embrace it.
That's right. And if you don't think that you're good enough to do it, just practice. Like late at night, just get yourself a little mood lighting, light yourself a candle, take your shirt off, stand in front of the mirror. And when you're getting ready for a little personal one-on-one sexy time, you just become like that little East Indian old lady that you've always wanted to fat to. Right? What can I do for you today?
That's a little bit more of an advanced technique. I don't know if our audience is quite ready for that, but
come in, young boy.
Gary, are you gonna do a talk at a con and give that as legitimate information? All right, everybody, stand in front of the vanity mirrors and start rubbing yourself and start talking in a French accent.
Here's how we get into character.
Just one. Yeah, let me get into character. Oh, well, hello, my friends. Do you want to come in for a full body rub?
Now, I understand Gary's playing this to the hilt for comedic effect, but I will say this. Sexy Bastard is one of my favorite characters from Austin Powers. You could not be
fat bastard.
Fat bastard. You could not be
too
outrageous. You can't be too outrageous. Well, because he says I'm dead sexy, right? Hey, shut up! Go fuck yourself.
Show has reached a new low.
Suck it, Trebek.
Sorry, I hope that wasn't me that brought it down this far. I mean, it probably was, but. And to answer your question, Cam, if I'm ever on a panel anywhere, you need to seriously question the integrity of the people that are running that convention.
Yeah, they probably got you for what, a 6-pack?
Oh shit! One beer and I'm good to go.
But back to what I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by the fucking intern. Don't be afraid to go too outrageous with it. But by all means, the other thing too about being a GM is be able to read the table. If you go to do that and everybody's mouth just drops open in shock and everybody becomes incredibly uncomfortable and everybody starts reaching for their phones or finding excuses to get away from the table, you may have just pushed it a little too far. Just saying.
You may have pulled a Gary and started rubbing yourself.
You may have just.
Sometimes you got to go all in for effect, right? If you're really trying to sell a scene, sometimes you need to drop your pants at the local gaming store, and
don't violate any local laws.
You've done it right if you end up in jail. That's my motto.
The opinions expressed by Gary are not necessarily the opinions of the Savage Worlds GM podcast.
The amount of nose bridge pinching that David's done in this one video.
It's awesome.
There are reasons we invite Gary on. I'm trying to remember what they are.
It's always lively.
Just give me one.
It's always lively.
So maybe to redirect back to.
So, do we have anything from the chat room?
What were we talking about?
Any conversations from the chat? I heard from them in a while.
Games?
No, I was going to actually redirect back to something that Jib has said a lot on the show, and fuck, my brain just went blank.
As it usually does whenever Jib talks.
I'll tell you something that I don't know if it was Jib, but I heard it on the Happy Jacks. Speaking of NPCs and takeoffs and sideways shots, they were doing a vampire game or something like that. I was listening to the actual play or whatever, but anyways, so one of them had done this newspaper clipping, and it was some old lady that was she had like a restaurant or something like that. And how did it go? Basically, this old lady was just a little like side blurb, and she was celebrating the 25th anniversary of her store being open, and everybody just sort of glommed onto that and took off with it. And it's one of those examples of how things can go sideways. It's kind of like just a randomly stupid thought. But this is why I was saying earlier that you are probably best not to prepare or even make your, like Dave was saying, take your notes. Write down your bubbly, and then after your character sort of comes to life, that's when you stat it out and maybe make it an asset in your game.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the biggest NPCs of all in the game. Let's talk about the wild card bad guy. Let's talk NPC bad guy.
Let's talk about you.
Fanatics is your friend.
Fanatics is your friend?
Let's be honest. Everyone always asks how can I get my bad guy to live a little longer? Fanatics is your friend, but it's also absolutely a very dangerous place to be, because now you have to come up with why that person just sacrificed themselves for the big bad. Is it, Gary's Emma from the top of the show, where these are all her lovers around her and they're going to, take the shot? Or is this, is this a bodyguard who has honor in, keeping that person alive or whatever?
Or maybe it's a mad scientist and it's like weird test tube mutants.
Well, yeah, but the idea is, as soon as you introduce this idea that, the big bad's always going to get away because of fanatics, now you have opened yourself up to having to role play fanatics. They have to be fanatically devoted to that big bad, and you have to sell that so that it doesn't seem like a cop out when suddenly NPC 37 jumps in front of the big bad and takes that shot. That fanatic has to actually be fanatical. You have to believe that they really would jump in front of that and take that blow for the big bad.
It's always going to depend on your game, but I also think too that one of the things you can do is in the game, especially if you're playing like in a modern, or maybe not even necessarily playing in a modern. Who am I hearing myself from? Okay, I don't know. I keep hearing feedback. So if you're watching if any of us are watching the live, make sure you mute it. There we go. I'm not hearing anymore. Must be coming from Dave. Thanks, Dave.
Wow, way to go, Dave. I thought you were a pro, buddy.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right.
Just bringing the caliber of the show down.
I think one of the things
over here.
I think one of the big mistakes that a lot of GMs make when they're creating their big bad is, number one, not looking at motivation. I think some of the best big bad villains are tortured, twisted, turned around heroes who have just had the final straw, and now they've snapped and gone off the deep end. Having a character who was, let's say, I almost don't want to say like a Batman type character, but I guess Batman would be a great villain. You have this guy who was a vigilante, fought for justice, maybe was an attorney or a lawyer, and just kept watching all these scumbags getting released on technicalities.
Oh, you say it, could you?
No.
You sissy.
Well, that's basically the plot of the Injustice games, just it's Superman instead of Batman.
Right, but I'm talking about as a big bad. I'm talking about as a big bad, and then have the big bad bring us focus on your murder hobo group, who wants to go around just killing everybody. Those motherfuckers have to die. So now he's stalking you, and what I'm saying is bring motivation to your bad guy. He just isn't going to show up in a black hat, twist the handlebar mustache, and tie everybody down to the train tracks. Motivation. Why is he a bad guy? Why is he doing what he's doing? Why is he doing it to the party?
Well, and remember again, gauge the game you're playing in. That works great for kind of a verisimilitude, kind of realistic game where you need a realistic, personality. If you're playing in a game like I know some of the ones that Gary runs, where they're a little more shtick oriented, they're a little more kind of off the cuff, fun to play, then you need to go melodrama with that bad guy. They need to have the mustache twisting. They need to have the shadow that follows them around, mimicking all of the emotions of what they're doing. You need to overplay every aspect of that character because that's the thing you're trying to capture. You stop and think about Hans Gruber from frickin' Die Hard. That is absolutely a caricature of a thief. He doesn't have a believable idea. It's all shtick, but you buy it because that's the movie you're watching. Everything else is shtick, so it just fits in. If you played that as an ultra serious thief over top of pulpy, action, the character is going to bump the story. So you also have to make sure you're watching that your character matches the story your players are engaged with.
That's a fair cop. I'll agree with that.
How dare you cheapen my games and call them shtick? I will say between me and you, Dave, the bad guy, the big bad guy in my next game has a giant missile for a wiener.
I was going to say, I've seen your tabletop simulator set up for games. I don't think we can run a game that's not shtick.
It will be glorious.
So all Gary's big bads are like 80s movies villains?
Pretty much.
I was thinking Austin Powers.
He showed me it would bring us into TVMA rating, if not X.
So what most of Gary's big bads would be Mark Hamill's role in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Oh, absolutely.
Gotcha. Well, I would also say to this, if you're cocknocker, you just had a huge fist. That was it.
With his bong
saber. Bong saber. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch that again now because I've seen it. I know I've seen it. I've seen them all. I love that.
Great
Kevin
stuff.
Smith is awesome. Jason Mewes.
Great stuff. I would also say if you're playing, so if you're playing a more serious game, I would say having a villain. I think one of the mistakes GMs make is making the villain too approachable. Characters having too much of an easy access to the big bad. He is the driving force of your story. Why is he going toe to toe with Joe Schmo from your party? What? No, I don't think so. And I think nothing makes a better big bad guy or bad guy in a modern setting, at least, than somebody who's unfucking touchable. who is protected by the cops, protected at every angle, literally gets away with murder, and nobody can do anything.
Diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, excellent. That was a good one.
See,
like
I mean,
Kingpin from Daredevil.
We all point to those moments from a movie, those moments from a play, those moments from a great book, where the character is just alive for you as the person who's reading that or viewing it or playing through it in a game. That's what you're trying to achieve as a GM. You want the big bad has to be someone your players love to hate. That's what draws them in. That's what gets them engaged to have their character put their life on the line to stop the big bad.
So what makes let's use a classic villain. What makes Darth Vader a great NPC big bad, if he is?
See, I would almost argue that Vader would be a horrible NPC big bad, because Vader is that force of nature villain. He can't be stopped, not because the players can't bring charges against him or anything like that, but he is simply a force of nature. They have to go through 3 films to be big enough and bad enough to even stand next to him. And even at the end, they don't defeat him. He defeats himself.
Mm-hmm.
The same is true of some of the other big name villains, like the Joker is a horrible villain to try to encapsulate for your players, because again, it's a force of nature. It's this force of chaos. That character is not meant to be a direct one-off with the player characters. It's meant to just sow the seeds of destruction and chaos all around them, and they've got to run around and put the world back together. Big bads that your characters can sink their teeth into. I think if we're gonna go, ultra classic, somebody that everybody can relate to. I mean, Sidious is better than Vader, because Sidious is that power behind the throne at first. They don't know that Palpatine is Sidious, so there's this unknowable thing out there, and you can always see his fingerprints. It never directly come in. You can't take a shot at him because you're never in the room with him. It's you get there, and there's all the evidence, but he's gone. Like
the puppet master. The idea of the grand puppet master pulling all the strings.
I think that's the better, the major villain to pose against characters, because again, this is something that's very easy to run with as a GM. Whenever the player characters run into a combat opponent, that's a lieutenant. It's an underling. It's someone doing the bidding of the puppet master, who is expendable. The puppet master has extended them because he can lose that resource. You never get to face off against the puppet master because the puppet master is not going to risk themselves. So they have to be smart enough to never give the players that opportunity to come against them. Whereas Vader is constantly just walking in because he knows they can't do anything to him.
Well, right. He's more big badass than big bad. He's just an unstoppable badass. Which does not translate well to a tabletop game where you have rules about damage and everything else.
Yeah,
his plot armor does
6 damage, 6 wounds to him in a single strike, and you're going, well, fuck, that went sideways in a bigger bad hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And fanatics, the way you work fanatics with that is Vader just picks a guy with the force and holds him in front of him.
Which that would actually be really funny.
Well, then, what do you guys? Okay, so what do you guys think of this concept? So what you end up happening is, let's say, the best big bad. I don't know about that's a value judgment, but probably the way to kind of structure and approach the big bad in your campaign and your game is, number one, are you playing a long-lived campaign potentially? If you are, then I think you can do the Sauron effect, to where the big bad is this immense force that's just polluting and twisting everything around him, and what the players are fighting against is not the big bad, but his effect that he's having on the world around him. So now, you all of a sudden, now, fields are going barren, weird twisted monsters are popping up everywhere and terrorizing town folk. Oh, there's wizards vying for, the right to kneel at his hem of his robes and become the next, become the Dark Lord's master, servant. Is that kind of what we're saying? Is like the best way to go?
It's certainly one way to go. I think another example of a great way to take an NPC big bad villain that you want to be this recurring character for your players is introduce them as someone who thinks they're doing good. That is quintessential to this whole good bad dichotomy. No one ever thinks they're the bad guy. The bad guy is not sitting there going, how can I be bad today? They've got a goal they're trying to achieve. A great example from popular culture would be Victor Von Doom from Marvel. Here's a character who is the lord and master of a country, and he is just so intelligent, so strategic-minded that he knows the world would be a better place if he was in charge. And his country is proof, because his country is the best country in the world in all these major categories. And then you find out it's also the worst in all the places where it's a dictatorship, so no one has any freedom. But it still has the best economy. It has the best amenities. Take this character and give them a believable arc where they think they're doing the right thing, but the effect they're having on your game world is so negative, the players have been sent to stop them. And then have the confrontation where you have that opera house scene from Star Wars where it's being twisted. Well, no. The truth is this, but you'll never learn that from your masters. They wouldn't teach you that. It's forbidden knowledge.
Right. Look at all the horrible, evil things the good guys are doing. I mean, promote you to Jedi Master, but not give you a seat on the council? That's unheard of. Why do they want you to spy on somebody? Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. That twisting the knobs, just slightly manipulating. It's the puppet master effect.
A similar character to Dr. Doom in the DC universe, Brother Blood, that kind of like big religious cult leader where like you'd already have the fanatics in there, but like not only is he completely convinced that he has the right, everyone else in his cult does, where like I want to create a new world order, like the world is full of sin. I want to like bring about like my ascension to godhood to cleanse sin so we can be reborn as pure beings. Like not only like does everyone like one think that he's right, like society won't screw them because like religious freedoms and that kind of thing, so can't touch them from that angle as well.
Yeah, look at things like The Prince by Machiavelli. Look at the careers of someone like Che Guevara. Che Guevara is considered this folk hero by some and a bloody warlord by others who look at the manner in which he achieved what he achieved as not being in line with what he was trying to accomplish. Take a look at real world villains or real world heroes and flip the script. Look, find what did they think they were trying to achieve? What were their methods? Were their methods, widely approved? And you might have the player characters who have a moral reason to stop the big bad, but the rest of the world is supporting the big bad because the big bad's bringing about positive change, just doing it in a horrible manner.
Yeah, like Kingpin from the Netflix Daredevil series.
Who's the Legends, DC Legends, the guy in that, across time, he's got his whole see the world burn. He's another good example of like an evil villain that thinks he's doing right.
I haven't watched that one, unfortunately.
You haven't watched any of that? Wow, what's wrong with you? I'll look it up and I'll see if I can't figure out what the guy's name is, because he's like the Doctor Doom character that you're talking about.
I think another way to go too is to make your heroes responsible for creating your big bad. Either by their direct action or their inaction. Their conscious choice not to do something creates the big bad, or their conscious choice to do something creates their downfall, creates their big bad. So, like, for example, they go, if it's, we're talking about typical murder hobo style gameplay where they rush into town and they burn it down. One kid survives and vows to kill them all. And it's just total pure vengeance. It's this character's motivation.
For me, whenever I hear that pitch of, the bad guy who became the bad guy because of the heroes, the classic example for me is freaking Buddy from The Incredibles.
Yep.
Voiced by Jason Lee. I'm a huge fan of Jason Lee, and that's what makes me always think of him. But this is a character who quite literally runs up to the heroes and goes, "I'm your biggest fan," and gets so shunned because he offers nothing of value to the heroes. A classic freaking thing that your players are going to do in the game. This NPC means nothing. They're just set dressing. I don't need to talk to them and give my autograph. And now, bam, that character has become the absolute nemesis of the entire party later on. That type of a quick twist on, again, classic player behavior turned into just this ultimately horrible character.
Actually, a twist that I was just thinking of, whether you talking about the one kid that's up behind, like a different version of that could be really good, is like they go to a town and they're able to set pillage and all that stuff really easily, because the guard or the army or whatever is gone because they're off fighting some other battle or whatever. They come back, everything's destroyed, find out the party's responsible, and then the war band is after you with the journal because or the mayor or whatever, because you killed all of our families, we will kill you for it. And
right,
they could band together all the other people the party screwed over the course of the campaign.
I don't necessarily disagree, but not as a centralized focus of a big bad. To me, that seems more of, hey, your actions have consequences. You went and did this thing, and you unwittingly started this goblin and human war that is going to end up coming back just to bite the entire continent in the ass. Because an example of that in gameplay is kind of what I'm talking about here, Cameron. The players are sent out to scout a goblin encampment and report back. And in classic murder hobo fashion, they kill everybody. And then they're unaware to them, they're being tracked. The goblins find out that humans slay their entire camp, and they start raiding human villages. And then human villages go, "What the fuck? We had a treaty." They start attacking back. Then, we got to go up the mountain to the Goblin King. The Goblin King goes, "Whoa, we're going to bring in our forces and allies." And next thing you know, there's this huge, huge thing that the player character started. I'm fully behind that as far as your actions have consequences in a role-playing game. I don't know if that's fine-tuned focus enough to be the big bad thing. I mean, it could be.
If you want to twist that just slightly, if you want to harvest a big bad for your players, take a real deep look at their hindrances. That guy who has, orphan on his written down on his character sheet, the big bad's his dad. The guy who lost his wife in a horrible accident, she's the victim of the big bad in an earlier plot. Look real deep at your player character's hindrances, and you will have amazing options to twist into just horrible nemesis for the player characters that their character wants to destroy, wants to kill, and then put them in a situation where killing the bad guy is not the solution that's necessary. They have to negotiate. They have to bring them to justice. You know, they'll be held accountable if this person dies. You know, the big bad in your modern day game has a death switch inserted into his heart. If he dies, all the nuclear weapons in his country arm and go off. Now your player characters can't kill him. They have to take him alive.
It's devious. I will say this too. As a GM, when it comes to your big bad, be a bastard. Agree to meet the players in a neutral area to sit down and negotiate, and then you don't show up, and it's a slaughter fest. Let him walk blindly right into that trap, and when your players at the table bitch at you and call you dick, go, he's a villain. What were you thinking?
That just seems a little heartless, man. That's kind of heartless.
He's not going to show up.
Fucking watch Braveheart, the scene at the very fucking beginning where they all go off to the big clan meeting, and they're all hanged. Every last one of the motherfuckers is strung up. Their little squire is strung up next to him, so you got little boys hanging there from the rafters. I mean, go deep, dark, heartless, bad guy, and stick it in and break it off.
Yep.
You want to leave an infected, oozing wound on the player character's psyche so that they have a reason to constantly re-engage that particular enemy.
Wow, why are you guys so mean?
Make it hurt.
Can't you just slap their moms or something? do we really got to go so dark?
Have them kill have the big bad kill everybody they love.
Have you not heard of Jared's zombie game? Were you surprised at this?
And here's the thing. It sounds like you. Oh my god.
Okay, we're getting a lot of pushback.
Such a dick. Holy shit! Why are you being such a dick? I'm role playing. I'm role playing the character.
Mm-hmm.
What is my big bad's motivation? Why are these guys standing? Well, how would he deal with that?
That reminds me, another thing they could another idea inspired for me from the new Castlevania series on Netflix and that kind of, or the Hunchback of Notre Dame. You could have the main villain be the head of the church of the area, and he's going and a lot of the characters could be spellcasters, whatever it is. So your characters wives or whatever have been burned because they're colluding with demonic forces because you all use magic. That goes way to go about it.
Yeah, it goes back to that make them untouchable kind of thing we were talking about earlier. Yep.
Yeah. It works great in Deadlands where, magic already is kind of forbidden and looked down on. And, you take your setting and use that as a great example. But I just want to do this. So, Gary, we're getting a lot of pushback from you and from a few fans in chat here that, Jared and I are pouring it on just a little too thick. That, it looks like we got people who feel like they need to take a shower after hearing what we're saying.
But not for what Gary was saying earlier.
It's light and fluffy. How do you make a light and fluffy bad guy, Gary?
Well,
there's a little series called My Little Pony.
First of all, what's his name? Light and fluffy. Yeah, I don't know. You got me there. Light and fluffy. I don't like this pressure, Dave. Why are you gonna put me on the spot like this in front of my vast audience, all my admirers?
Game. At Plankton, you're good. He just wants the Krabby Patty secret formula. That's all he wants.
Do you make his master plan ridiculous? Where it's completely unharmful to anybody. Like he wants to remove the vowel O from all English language, and that's.
Wait. Are we talking about Big Bad, or are we talking about Dr. Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb, who every device that's going to destroy the world has a big red button on it that says "Do not push."
Right. I mean, there could be something to that, to where if it's appropriate for your game, by all means, if like we were saying earlier, adjust it to the genre of what you're playing. But yeah, if you're playing with 8-year-olds and stuff, yeah, don't. It's probably not a great idea to kill them.
I'm sorry, Timmy, but your child was burned at the stake as a heretic.
You got an 8-year-old. You have an 8-year-old sitting across from you, and they go, "Oh yeah," the guy walks up to your mom in the game, my mom, yeah, and just sticks a knife in her throat, and then like a fish. Blood goes everywhere. Oh! Gauge it to your audience, of course.
Yeah. Well, now, and to be fair, you all have heard me go on and on about, stick it in, break it off, make it an infected wound. The way my character years ago in one of my very first long-running campaigns was treated, the big bad was the king. I was one of the king's knights, freshly out of training, had just graduated, was out on my first mission, and I actually succeeded, which I wasn't supposed to do. And so I was taken to a crossroads, strung up, my armor stripped off of me, and then I was whipped until I died. And the character's god reached down and touches him after death, brings him back, and now that character can never change his armor. He can never wield any weapon other than the one he made with his own 2 hands. And he will not die. He cannot rest until he takes down the king, who he's sworn a oath to protect. That's how you stick it in and break it off. This GM set me up with a goal that my character had to complete, given to him by his own deity, to violate his most desperately held oath to serve the king. And the king had done something worthy of him turning against him by over-punishing the character. But the king was just following the law the character believed in. Now you've got a character that has to question everything going on in that game. As a player, that was such an interesting role play to have to go through the machinations of, well, what were the motivations that my character would follow the Gias from the god or the oath to the king? Would he follow the law, or did the law not serve him well? And you put these things in front of the player that are interesting to interact with, and it gives you a reason for 2 years of gameplay with the same character. Otherwise, the character, quite frankly, in Jared's zombie game, there wasn't that personal motivation. And I remember it was about halfway in, Jared, I actually sent you a private note and was like, yeah, I think my character at this point just joins the local survivor settlement, and I'll roll up a new character for next week. Yep. And Jared's like, hold on to that, stick it in your feather for a minute. And
because I'm about to do some shit to you guys in the session. Yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, I to paraphrase what Dave just said and put that into a movie concept, how do you as a player do it? As a GM, allow the GM, allow the player character to kill the king. I mean, at some point you have to allow him to kill the king. And how do you do that? Well, you pull a RoboCop. Oh, I cannot execute. I cannot take any action against the CEO or an employee of OCP. And then he shows all the shit that this guy's done. And I can't remember. Aha, I've won. Screw you. You're fired. Thank you. Blow him away. So that's what that thing with the king is like. All of a sudden, hey, you know what? People turned against you. All the knights and lords and ladies have turned against the king. And they've, excommunicated him? Or the church has excommunicated him, and he's no longer fit to be king, and now he's not king. Now your character gets the sweet, sweet reward of being able to realize his goal. So, I mean, the goal that, and I want to kind of roll into that a little bit. As a GM, you have to be a little careful when it comes to your big bad, because remember, it's not you versus the players. It's not your character, the big bad, necessarily versus the characters. You should still have a way for the characters and players to win, because ultimately they should. It's the game we're playing. But early on, it doesn't mean you have to make it easy for them. They should have to, blood, sweat, and tears. They should come very close to dying, if not a few people dying in the course of it getting done. But just remember not to go too far, become too enthusiastic with your big bad to the point where you as a GM are not role-playing the big bad's motivation, but you're being aggressive towards the players and using a big stick to hit them over the head with and calling it the big bad.
Well, and let me just ask, is that why we see so many of the how do I get my big bad to live longer style questions within the community is because they are trying to use the big bad as the video game boss, this big heavy club that you bludgeon the characters with in combat, rather than someone who's actually interesting to foil the plots of.
Right. I agree. I think that's a lot of it. I think it's this number one, the big boss idea from a video game is, yeah, well, you beat him. Not necessarily the villain in a story or a series of stories. You don't necessarily kill the bad guy necessarily in the story, but yeah, I think that's a lot of it. Is these, we see a lot of those posts, right? Oh, well, you know what? And I think it's also to just a little bit of the nerd factor that plays into that. Like, wait a minute, there has to be the right combination mechanically in the game rules that I could put together. If I just put together the right combination of edges and hindrances and spells, and I do it perfectly, I will win.
I have the light arrow, Heath be dead.
Right. Guess what? It's not your job to win.
And this ain't D&D.
Yeah, I would even suggest to say, design your big bad's henchmen to lose. When you sit down and you're giving them what they need to have, the very first thing you need to figure out, why does this character deserve to lose? What major flaw do they have? Are they bullheaded? Are they, hot-tempered? Pick something. Arrogant. And then build the character around that with huge, open, gaping, wide open windows so the players to just swoop in and just decimate those characters. Because those henchmen aren't the story. The henchmen, yes, they need to be interesting. They need to be someone that the players are invested in a little bit. But at the same time, your big bad is Dr. Moriarty, who you find out snuck in while you were fighting the henchmen, stole the device, and made off with it in the middle of a fight, and you never knew.
Well, also, let's take a look at, for example, let's take the Godfather storyline just for a moment and take a look at that for a quick moment. If the Corleones are the villains, they're the bad guys, then Michael Corleone's biggest flaw is the big bad in your game is he's arrogant. He has the arrogant hindrance like you would not believe. It's not about greed. It's not about anything else. It's about arrogance and loyalty. Those are his two key character flaws that will always set him up to lose.
And then when you're looking at henchmen, you look at Fredo, the brother, the right-hand man, pride. Oh my God, is he just so filled with pride he can't even imagine the idea that his pride can't overcome. And that becomes this giant weakness that makes it a three-legged table that's so easy to knock over.
Right. Speaking of tripods, you got anything to add to that, Gary?
Oh, I thought you were talking about Lord of the Rings, then I realized it's Frodo, not Fredo. We just skipped a genre here. And man, if you want your NPCs to last a little bit longer, bennies. We had a Deadlands game just recently with the Chinese ogre, and I like to speed things up, fast, fun, and furious, get it over, get it done with. But it just at some point it just got to the stage where it's like, okay, I'm going to start flipping the switch, turn this guy on, and let's see what we can do. And I started using my bennies against him, and holy crap, did that turn that Chinese ogre into a meh to a like because they were running for the hills. They swing at them, they try and do some damage. I soak the damage. They were on the wobbly rain. I don't know if you've seen my videos on my Murder Hobo Show channel, but the Vey map, the Wild Ride, is the one I'm talking about that Vey did. Zovius maps and stuff. I call her Vey, but anyways, we're on that riding. I had all my players rolling their -2s for unstable platform. Chinese ogre comes in with his big ass stick. And as soon as all of my players start trying to shoot at him or take him out, I was just every benny I had, I threw at it. Player bennies, wild card bennies, and what a difference does bennies make? You can really bennies were almost like an elastic band that you could stretch out and use. The more you use them, the more that you turn them into this. Now, how powerful do I want my Chinese ogre to be is all completely dependent on how many bennies am I willing to throw at him to save him from dying. Mm-hmm. Which I freaking love about Savage Worlds, because one of my pet peeves with 5th edition, I love it, I played it forever. Everybody has the effing monster manual. You can't throw a rust monster at somebody without them knowing exactly what it does. You can't throw a beholder at somebody without them knowing exactly what it does. Savage Worlds isn't like that. There is no, people call it bestiary, which makes me laugh, and I almost wanted to do that to be an asshole, but there is no bestiary for Savage Worlds. You can make up anything you want. It's one of the best parts about it. You want your NPC to last? Use your freaking bennies. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, good advice.
It'll make a world of difference.
Well, and also, too, playing all of the rules. Okay, let's see. You got 1 wound, that's a -1. You got 1 level of fatigue, that's -2. You're on unstable platform, that's another -2. And you're trying to throw a rock or a bottle rocket. You set up this bottle rocket thing to fire at them. That's an improvised weapon penalty. That's another negative. Okay, go. Oh, damn, I can't overcome a -5. Holy shit.
Oh, wait, the cannons fired the round before, and now there's smoke obscuring everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, the tracks are out. What? Oh, yeah, you look ahead, the tracks are out. That's going to be rough terrain. Ew. So go ahead and give me that piloting or driving penalty and another -2. Yeah, and when you use all the rules, Savage Worlds just works perfectly. If your bad guys and extras are dying too quickly, you need to step back, go look in the mirror, and ask yourself, did I apply all the rules?
Yeah, I'm no Savage Worlds rules champion by any means. Like, I'm new to it, old school D&D, but man, I was having this argument with, or not even so much of an argument, but we had this discussion with the guy that runs my local gaming store, Nerd Haven. And the longer that I'm in it, the more I get the feeling like if you think Savage World sucks, it's not that it sucks, it's that you're fucking doing it wrong. You're not using all the rules. And I just keep telling them that. It's like, you're missing something. If you're not using your bennies, if you're not using the rules, if you're not using all the simple little tricks and tactics, you're not doing it right. And that can really lead to a devastating effect in gameplay. And I'm learning, I'm still learning all of the rules. And when I threw unstable platform at my characters, what a difference that made. When I throw some kind of stink bomb or cloud or something, what a difference that can make. It's from a GM's perspective, when I sit back and look at it, okay, all my players are running over these mooks left, right, and center. How am I going to challenge them? How am I going to make my NPC last longer? It literally, like I said, it's a learning curve for me, because I'm 2 years into Savage Worlds, and it literally is, the more that I use the rules in the book, the more that I find I can, as a GM, mold the situation to be as deadly or as easy as I want it to be. And the bennies, like I was saying earlier, are a prime example. If you throw bennies at it, wow, what a difference that makes, and how tough your NPC can be.
Well, let's talk this one real quick, because I hear this all the time. I have a player group of 4 people. They're all novices, and I threw 4 extras at him and a wild card dragon, and they kicked my ass. Okay, well, how did that go? So we roll initiative, and what did you do with the extras? Well, I put 1 extra up against each one of the wild cards and made a fighting roll. Wait, back it up. How about all 4 of the extras go and pick out what they think is the biggest threat in that party, and they all gang up on that guy. And now they're all making fighting rolls at a +3, and they've got him surrounded. And so one of them decides to push him to the ground, and another one uses the disarm maneuver to take his club away from him and beat him with it. Did you try that? You could do that? Yes, you could do that. They don't have to just walk up. Okay, make your fighting roll. Okay, oh, make your fighting roll. Oh, okay, make your fighting roll. Oh, okay, make your fighting roll. Oh, and when you play combat, I find this to be the case. If you're not having satisfying combat resolution, or it's not going that way, you need to step back and go, okay, this keeps happening. Why do I keep doing it this way if I'm not getting the result that I'm looking for to get out of it? Let's back this up a second, take a look at it. Let me just try one of these things from now on. Gang up. I'm just going to focus on gang up for the next couple of sessions. See how that goes. Then I'm going to try maybe doing smarts tricks with my extras. Then maybe I'm going to try doing all the other things. Push. Do you know it? Disarm. You want to see a player lose their shit in 10 seconds? Go. All right, he's disarming you. He's going to take his club and smack your sword out of your hand. What? Yeah. Fighting roll and a -2. He hits. Here's the damage. 18. You know what? I'm going to throw a Benny on that. Ooh, 25. Okay, you need to make a strength roll versus 25 to keep hold of that weapon. If not, it comes out of your hand. And picking it up is drawing a weapon. So that's a -2 to any other action you take if you go to pick it up on your next turn. Oh, look, the other extra picks it up and starts clobbering you with it. Very simple, very easy to do. Role play the combat. Combat's not a separate part of, it's not isolated from the story, or it shouldn't be. If you're having that kind of situation, the combat should be just as much part of the role play as the role play. How would the mercenaries react? Would they use battle tactics? How would your NPCs go about trying to win this battle if that's their goal? If their goal is just to hold the players, how do they do that? Well, maybe they take cover. Maybe they keep firing ranged weapons at them from cover, just trying to delay them. They don't all just run into the battlefield, stand toe-to-toe, and trade blows, because this is not a game about attrition. There are no hit points. You're not going to wear each other down.
You know, if you've got a group of players that, you know, are running in and just raffle stomping all of your NPCs in melee, put them up against a group that includes 1 or 2 guys who have fleet-footed, dodge, and good shooting. And just every time the players move into position, these characters fall back. They flank around, they retreat, and they're moving further than the players are because they've got fleet-footed. They've got that edge to always be just out of range, but oh look, short range for that short bow. Look at things like that. Look at the battle tactics that a character who's trying to stay alive would use against the player characters. You know, stop and think about that from that angle, and then layer in something. If you're playing an NPC who's mean and is trying to, you know, really stick it to the players, they're using barbed arrows so that the players have to cut them out after the fight. Or you get the NPC with wanted, that character is using poison on all their weapons. You know, take a look at those things you've been role-playing the NPC to be. The hot-headed guy is also got brawler, because he's just going to run in and just bury his fist in one of your PC's jaw. Turn frickin' 1. Why? He's hot-headed. That's what he does. So build them with edges, build them with hindrances, build them with things that actually go with the way you've role-played them, and set that up so that when time comes, just by continuing that role-play during the combat, you're already taking tactically sound maneuvers against the player characters.
I'll throw one out here real quick. Just if you're experiencing that, try this. I challenge you to try this in your next game, and send an email to savagedaddy@gmail.com. I want to hear how it works for you if it doesn't. Have your NPC wildcard. Start from cover. Use their regular standard movement, 6 inches. Move out of cover, fire an arrow, and move back into cover as all one part of their action. And let me know how frustrated your player characters get.
Have an NPC go on hold, and as soon as the player steps their character out of cover, interrupt them. High agility character, do that roll off. Now the player character is standing exposed out of cover, and they don't get that bonus for the hit penalty on your attack. or they don't get the armor bonus from being behind that cover when you roll damage against them. Use those things that make sense. The player character declares they're going to rush up and beat you with their sword. Have your character interrupt and immediately disarm. And on a raise, they grab that sword and come back around for an attack the next round.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that you're doing it wrong, but I should have rephrased that or corrected myself and said, you're not doing it as right as you could be doing it.
Yeah, I was going to say,
what have we been saying all night?
You don't want to sound like us. You have a successful podcast?
You're not doing it as well as you could be. Because it's the beautiful part about Savage Worlds is like combats can be these malleable balls of putty, and depending on what you put into it is how long you can stretch them or shrink them into combat. And
Gary, you're Canadian is going. You're apologizing. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean you wrong.
It's the Canadian kicking in you.
So what you're saying, Gary, if I'm hearing correctly, is when you understand how to apply and educate the rules from the game, you can make combat fast, furious, and fun?
Oh, hells yes.
All at once?
Well, I mean, it can be fast and fun, and you'll make your players furious for disarming them and going back into cover after killing them with their own sword.
You'd be surprised how fast that can mess with somebody. And, it's something that I'd assume that as a DM, you have so much on your plate. You're looking at character stats. You have the idea going in your head. You're trying to think up story names. You're trying not to fat like you're an old Mexican lady in front of everybody. Like, you've got stuff on the go. And you don't always stop to take a step back to think, what am I doing? And you'll find that combat a lot of times is just... you're standing here, he's standing here, and like you were saying earlier, Jared, it's just shoot, and that's it. You don't stop to think. I wouldn't, I tell you a story. When I was 16 in Canada, believe it or not, local 7-Eleven, we were doing some shit late at night, 9 o'clock, and these guys rolled in, and shit went south. There was a big fight. Later on, they came back, and I swear to God, it looked like they pulled a shotgun out of the car, and sort of all you could see was two barrels in the darkness. I never fucking ran so fast in my life. If somebody was pointing a gun at me, I'm not going to stand there and go toe to toe. This isn't Wild West gunslingers. This is me fucking shitting my Canadian pants, not saying sorry to anybody, pushing over old ladies and diving behind the local, the nearest 1985 Ford Granada that was parked in the parking lot. Like, you're not going to stand out there, and you just forget these things when you're DMing because you have so much on the go.
Well, even cops, cops in action movies still take cover.
Yes.
And they're the big badasses. I would also add, too, as far as a big bad, a very simple thing to do, give them a vulnerability and a weakness. Terminator, for example. I'm a Terminator. Here's I do not suffer wounds. I ignore wound penalties. I can be shaken, but other than that, nothing can wound me. I cannot be harmed. I am invulnerable. However, I have this weakness to crushing damage, hot lava, and electricity. Go. There. Watch the players just deal with that. Oh my God, here's this killing machine. He'll find you. He'll kill you. That's all he does. He can't be stopped. That's an excellent example of a villain.
Well, an interesting aspect of that, too, is don't look at the printed bestiary as the only reference to.
Oh God, no.
When Jared first ran the Dead End zombie game, the entire first season of that, where that lasted like 2 years and you just absolute grindhouse fest, he was using the stats out of the freaking Savage Worlds core for the zombies, of course, fantasy zombie stats. He was using those stats for zombies that are supposed to be Romero movie zombies. And oh my freaking God, those zombies could take a load of punishment. They took a little extra damage from a head wound, but it didn't just kill them outright. You still had to do a high number of wounds to them. There was all this layers of extra stuff that those zombies could do that just made them horrific, monstrous creatures that you were absolutely terrified of.
Right.
But then to change that and focus it more on people being the bad guys in the second playthrough We threw all that stuff out, and zombies became more like ghosts from the bestiary. Where they had like NAs for some stats.
Yeah, well, let's
you couldn't smart trick the zombie.
let's talk and compare about that, right? So if your goal is to do Romero-esque zombies, well, what are Romero-esque zombies? They're mindless, shambling, decaying corpses that feed on living tissue. Done. Okay, why would they have parry? Because they have fighting? Because they have fighting?
I mean,
nope.
Stop to think about this. The zombie is shambling towards you with its arms out. It's not trying to block. It's not. It doesn't have a parry. It's not trying to stop you.
Yeah. Does it have any discernible intelligence? No. So can you smart trick something that's got no smarts? No. Can you agility trick it? All damn day long, because they are slow as shit. So what Dave is saying too is, by all means, that's a great example of, wait, what's the intent of what I'm trying to do here? Does what's in the bestiary fit? No. All right, make changes. It's fine. Go ahead. Make the changes. Because you go, well, wait a minute. I can't give zombies a 0 parry. Well, you're right. You by Savage Worlds rules? No, you shouldn't. Because even a character with no fighting gets a 2. But guess what? In this world, no, 0 parry. Guess how easy headshots become for you in a zombie apocalypse with zombies that have a 0 parry? Very easy.
And remember, zombies always wild attack.
Yep.
So they're constantly putting themselves at -2 parry, which literally means you basically can't miss.
Right. So fine tune your character, fine tune your NPCs according to the rules of your universe or whatever you're playing. Okay, well, I think we've sufficiently beat this horse into glue and paste.
It's glue.
Yeah.
Off.
All right. So until next time, this is Jared Savage Daddy Gunning for Cameron, Dave, and Gary saying keep rolling and stay safe.